Food is more than just what's on our plate. It's the places where it's grown, it's the people who grow it, and so much more. Join me, Janice Person, your host, on Grounded by the Farm every other week as we talk about the foods we love. This episode is going to be a lot of fun talking about the holidays and the foods that mean so much for various people. When I pitched this with our last episode and on social media, I want to say I hoped some of you would call in and give me the lowdown on your holidays, but I also didn't count on it. So I also reached out to some friends and asked them if they would mind participating. The combination of different holidays and foods and all the things. I want to celebrate all of these holidays now. I really do appreciate that people were willing to share their family's traditions and sometimes putting that into historical or cultural context so that some of us who maybe don't celebrate the same holidays could get a feel for it. You're going to go kind of bouncing all over the place in this episode. We have a friend of mine from Mexico who he said, sure, I'll be happy to. And he gave us some great things to think about. My friend Josie came through with her Cuban and Puerto Rican background and her husband who I grew up with and the deep Southern traditions there. You're going to hear all of those. Nikki brings the mac and cheese. Oh, God. Wait until you hear this story. And then we have Dana, who talks to us about Hanukkah and some of the traditions there, and Rosemary, who shares some of her family's immigrant story, as well as some of the things that then brings to their table over the holidays. So between each of these stories and stuff, you'll hear a brief glimpse of our music, and then I'll come right back into the next one. Let's hear how different people celebrate the holidays with incredible foods.
My name is Ari Mateos. I live in Mexicali, Baja California, in Mexico. And I'll talk to you about a couple of foods that we commonly have during our holiday season that runs roughly from November 2nd, which is Dia de los Muertos, all the way to February 2nd, Dia de la Candelaria. The first dish we call pozole, and its origins, if not in its current form, but its origins go back to pre-Hispanic times. It's a dish made out of a pork meat with pork feet and spine. You cook the meat and skim the fat off the top. When the meat is ready, you add hominy and a paste made of dry, hot chiles. Once everything is cooked, you serve it in a deep dish and put shredded cabbage, chopped fresh onions, lime, chopped cilantro, oregano, and of course, a little bit more of dry, hot chile. It's a dish that you find all over Mexico with some regional versions, but that's basically the way that this dish is eaten. And it's a dish that you can find year-long in Mexico, but it's more common to have it made at home during the holidays, which is during our winter time. It's very good to have in the mornings after a night of partying. The second dish I want to talk to you about is something that we eat at home, a dish that cannot be missing from the dinner plate for Christmas Eve dinner. It's called bacalao a la vizcaína. Its origins are Spanish, but I bet that we have made some changes here in Mexico. And we use dry cod. You let it, put it in cold water the day before to remove the excess salt. And in a big pot, you fry it in a lot of olive oil. You fry garlic, chop onions, and chop a tomato. Basically, you use a 1-to-1 ratio of onion and tomato to cod. So if you're making 1 kilo of cod, you use 1 kilo of tomato and 1 kilo of onions. When everything is done in the oil and it's fried, you add the fish. And the tomato lets go a lot of juice, so you don't have to add any water. Once the fish is beginning to cook, you add olives, capers, and a little bit afterwards, you add potatoes so they don't get too cooked. And at the end, also you put capers and olives, and we put at the end a chile we call chile largo. It's a yellow, long pickle chile, which gives it a little bit of zest at the end. It's very good, this dish. In my family, it cannot be missing from the dinner plate for the Christmas Eve dinner. The best part of it is when you finish eating and you pick up all the juices and oil left in the plate with a piece of bread. It's very good. Any leftovers you can freeze and have a couple of months afterwards. So these are the two places that I wanted to share with you from Mexico.
Hi, this is Josie Gordon, and I live in Montgomery, Alabama with my husband and 3 kids. My background is that I am half Cuban, half Puerto Rican, and my husband is from Memphis, Tennessee. I think he's Scottish and Irish. We love the holiday season. It's a big deal for us because of the food that we make. Our kids are funny in that if you ask them their favorite part of the holidays, they will mention their favorite meal. I have Thanksgiving meal. Usually it's just the 5 of us. Sometimes we have other members of the family that come in, like Lem's brother or my sister. And we tend to make Thanksgiving very much a Southern holiday. So we have the sweet potato casserole, the green bean bundles, the turkey, and the dressing. Because I am Hispanic and my husband is not, I had to learn how to cook all his Southern favorites. So after 25 years of marriage, I have learned to cook a lot of Southern foods so that I could celebrate his heritage as well and make them happy with their Thanksgiving meals and the food that makes them feel attached to their history. So I cook. My daughter loves sweet potato casserole, and she only gets it on Thanksgiving, and my son loves green bean bundles, and my younger son loves turkey. We have a wonderful time because we relish in the food that we're making that we only get during Thanksgiving. Now, come Christmas, we have very much a Cuban Christmas. So we celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve. I think most people that are Latin will celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve. So on Christmas Eve, we go all out Cuban. We have the pernil, which is the Cuban pork. We have black beans, rice, yuca, and maybe a salad of some sort. So that is our traditional meal, and we have to have tostones, which are the fried plantains. So that is our big Christmas Eve meal, and usually my family comes into town for that. It's a big deal because we go to church and we do the candlelight service at church usually around 5. And so when we get home, that's when we start eating. And then we put on our Christmas pajamas and we have a great night. That is the most favorite time for all of us to celebrate.
My name is Nikki Miller Ka, and I am from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which is in the central part of North Carolina. I pretty much celebrate Christmas, Thanksgiving, and sometimes Kwanzaa. My grandmother, she was a farmer's daughter, and so that makes me a farmer's granddaughter. But I have to tell you, I have 2 brown thumbs, literally and figuratively. Please don't ask me to grow anything because I'll probably mess it up. But if you want me to cook it for you, I got you. So holiday foods that are really important to my family, typically we have the same meal for most holidays. We usually have ham and or lamb, turkey, of course, for Thanksgiving, but it's really about the sides. It's about the dressing, not stuffing, dressing. Because we're Southern, I have no idea why we call it dressing, but we do. Personally, I like cranberry sauce from a can. If it doesn't have ridges and lines, I don't want it. What really is the cornerstone of the meal is the macaroni and cheese. So I started making Thanksgiving dinner for my family when I was about 14 years old. I was the one that was in charge because my parents worked. And my grandmother, as she got older in her years, yes, she could still cook, but she needed a little bit of help. So I developed a recipe as a teenager for Southern mac and cheese. So what makes Southern mac and cheese different from other mac and cheese is it's like a souffle. There's eggs involved, tons of cheese, tons of love. It's always baked. There's never a roux. There's nary a tablespoon of flour, but it's thickened with the eggs, cream, and or milk, and cheese that's put into it, and it's baked. And I have this wonderful T-shirt that was gifted to me by a wonderful friend named Janice, and it says, and it's the truth, that macaroni and cheese is more important than turkey on the table. Even if the turkey didn't come out of the oven correctly, if it's overcooked, if the skin is too crispy, if it's burnt up, if it didn't cook at all, you still got the macaroni and cheese, and all is right with the world.
Hey Janice, it's Dana Zucker here from Sugar Water Manor. I would love to talk about Hanukkah. Not only is it deep in my soul, being raised in a Jewish household, but also because of its meaning. Hanukkah truly translates into dedication. And I think that it is so, so important. And Hanukkah is not a holiday. Hanukkah is a festival to be celebrated, a festival of a miracle when the temple was destroyed and then it was being rebuilt and they had these 8 days of oil to keep the light going. And it's about that dedication and the dedication to rebuild and that whole piece, which I think resonates in all of our lives and in everything we do, that we have to be dedicated and passionate in which to get things done and move us, our community, our families, our land, and everything else forward. So to me, Hanukkah holds meaning a lot deeper than just this festival of lights. Although it is filled with food and games, and that's what Hanukkah is filled with and celebrated with. That, to me, again, is so special because you're bringing together the family and friends and community to celebrate over food. And all the food is cooked in oil because we're celebrating that oil that lasted for the 8 days. I would have to say what shaped me with this is the dedication to how you cook the food for Hanukkah. The food that I wanted to talk about was the latke, which literally is a potato pancake. Simple potato pancake. It is something that was cooked in our household for many years. I remember we would set up outside because we would cook so many for friends and family. We would be at the temple and they'd set it out outside because the oil would just be going and going. You would have the smell. And if you do it in your house, you have a smell that lasts for weeks and weeks, and kind of sweet to have that reminder, but also nice to have it outside. So we dedicate ourselves to making these latkes, especially this one time a year. We start 1 or 2 days prior where we peel the potatoes, we shred the potatoes, and we soak them in an ice bath. And we change that water twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening, to really get all that starchiness out so we can really get a nice crisp potato latke. We mix it with flour, salt, pepper, eggs. Very simple, sometimes matzo meal instead of flour. And then it's cooked in oil at least a day or two after you start the process so you get that nice crisp. After we get those latkes good and cooked, then we love to serve them traditionally with sour cream and applesauce. Now, I'm not quite sure if that's how back in the late 1200s, if that's how the rabbi in Italy who kind of brought this tradition forward would have had his with sour cream and applesauce, and actually we have ours with Greek yogurt and applesauce, but that's the way we do it. Sometimes we try to extend those latkes out for the whole week, And we'll also have latkes topped with lox, or we'll have latkes topped with spinach and cheese melted on top for breakfast with a good poached egg. Sometimes we'll make sweet potato pancakes, sweet potato latkes. The other thing that we love to eat, but we don't cook them here, although rumor has it my sister-in-law does want to try to make our own this year, is sufganiyot, which is a round jelly-filled donut, which again is a fried donut, but when you bite inside, you get that burst of sweetness to celebrate the festival. So although Hanukkah is not a holiday, it is a festival that is celebrated this time of year. It is filled with food that is filled with dedication, just like the dedication of the synagogue when those candles burned, well, when the candle burned for 8 days.
Hello, my name is Rosemary Mark, and I live in Walnut Creek, California, which is just east of San Francisco. I am a recipe developer for food brands, and I blog and do social media under the name of Recipe Rose. I've been very delighted to hear from Janice on what are my favorite traditional holiday foods. My family combines two food cultures for Christmas. I'm first generation German American, and my husband Bernie is first generation Chinese American. So from my heritage, two favorite German foods are Lebkuchen and Spätzle. Quite different. Lebkuchen is a sweet and Spätzle is a noodle. The Lebkuchen is comparable to our gingerbread cookies. It's a dark colored honey dough that I spice with cinnamon, allspice, and nutmeg. I make a variation that I created many years ago with a lot of nuts so that it's a somewhat dense and chewy cookie, has a lot of ground almonds and brown sugar and honey and the spices, and then it's rolled and then baked on a little wafer, very much like a communion host wafer. And this is quite traditional for the cookie. This wafer is called Oblaten. I order those online, or if I'm in Germany, I purchase the Oblaten. They're inexpensive, but they're very particular to the cookie, which can be made without it, but it's just very nice to have this round cookie on the wafer. And the cookie can be made any size from 1 inch to 4 or 5 inches in diameter. It can keep for a very long time, a lot like a spice cake might keep because it is spicy and a little bit moist. I recall my father receiving these cookies in beautifully decorated tins from friends that would send it to him from Germany, and I still have many of his tins, which I use for storing these cookies. It's a very traditional way to package Lebkuchen. The other German traditional food that I make at the holidays is Spätzle, though I think Americans pronounce it as Spätzle. It's a noodle made with flour and egg and water and a little dash of nutmeg. I don't know if everybody puts nutmeg in it, but it makes a very lovely, distinctive flavor when I make it with a little nutmeg. So most cultures have a noodle of some sort. And what is different about Spätzle is it's not a rolled noodle. It's cut or grated with something called we call it a Spätzle maker. It's a little bit like a grater, and it grates the somewhat liquidy, thick pancake type noodle batter into boiling water to make very tiny dumplings. They can be served immediately with butter or gravy, or I like to pan fry them till crispy and serve with a very generous amount of caramelized onion and Gruyere or Emmentaler cheese. It's called Spätzle mit Zwiebeln und Käse, and that's how I like to serve the Spätzle. The other half of my family holiday tradition food is the Chinese food, which for my family is wontons. It's another noodle like the German side of my family that does Spätzle. Here's the noodle for the Chinese side. It's wontons. My mother-in-law started the tradition of making wonton on Christmas Day, and that's because the family would gather and there'd be lots of hands to make light work, or to make faster work, I would say, of folding all the wontons. My mother-in-law is no longer with us, but fortunately I watched carefully how she made her wonton filling, which is a very generous mixture of ground pork, Chinese sausage, shrimp, water chestnuts, lots of green onions, cilantro, soy sauce, oyster sauce, ginger, and very, very flavorful. But a very small amount gets wrapped into each wonton wrapper. My husband is the champion wonton folder. Every year he does a demo for everyone, and we've recorded it so that everyone can watch it as many times as they want so that they can get as expert as him folding the wontons. Now in my kitchen, we usually do 700 or 800 wontons in an afternoon, and we have friends over, so there's lots of people to enjoy eating the wontons that we serve in either a chicken or a vegetable broth soup with lots of greens, and then we like to send people home with some wontons that they can make on another day. They freeze very well, so it's great to be able to send home wontons with our friends. Now this year I plan to add a Chinese pastry to our menu because I've recently learned how to make Chinese custard pastries. I learned this from a new book called Moon Cakes and Milk Bread by a local California cookbook author. Her name is Christina Cho, and I think the custards are even better than what we would buy in Chinatown to go with our wonton meal at Christmas. Now, both these meals are not served at the same time. We've never had wonton and spätzle together. We make two different events, but we definitely have the German party with German food and the Chinese party with Chinese food, and everybody looks forward to it. So I hope you have a happy holiday and that you might enjoy this similar tradition on your own or with others.
What did you think? So many different traditions and so many different foods, and all of it coming together with amazing families and friends and adapting to new and different ways seems to be kind of common, and taking traditions a little bit of different direction. I am going to put some good links in the show notes. Nikki, for instance, has an incredible video of her making that mac and cheese, and I want you to be able to find some of Rosemary's recipes as well as some of the things Dana's got going on. So I'll put some of those links in the show notes. In the meantime, I'm putting my family on notice. The next episode is going to be about our family, foods, and things around the holidays. We'll see how much kicking and screaming is involved, but I'm going to try and get some family members to join me. So keep your fingers crossed for me. We'll see how well it works. With that, we'll be back in 2 weeks with my family's holiday Christmas kind of themes. And then we're going to be taking a short break through New Year and coming back with a new season. I cannot believe we had this season go on for straight over a year. Need a little bit of a break, need a little bit of a recharge, and then we'll be coming back. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.